So when we use the term the shadow, what we're referring to is the dark side of the personality, the part that we don't lead with. We lead with our looking good self, the very presentable part. The part that we think we might be rejected for, we hide behind in the shadows. Sometimes our friends think that's our most interesting part. Joseph Campbell says, "Be careful what you cast out, lest you cast out your best self." So I'm wanting to know myself more deeply. I'm wanting to bring more of who I am to my closest relationships so that we can be closer. There's a very convenient way of finding our shadow. Unlike in Carl Jung's time when this term was coined, we don't have to analyze our dreams to find it. All we have to do is look around in our life and who is it that bothers us? Who do we find repulsive? Who grosses us out? Who's obnoxious? And we'll find that we are having a piece of ourselves that we are not okay on in ourselves mirrored back to us. So people who, especially women who were really outspoken and bold and kind of brassy because I was busy hiding my angry, controlling bitch and my shadow, that I noticed, oh, mirror, mirror on the wall, I guess there's a part of myself I haven't really owned up to. When I was able to get into right relationship with her, I found that I was keeping a lot of power and passion in my hidden area rather than having it available to me to utilize in my life. We all have a shadow. It's natural and normal to have a shadow. We have some messages that come to us from our culture about how we're supposed to be. If you're an American, you're supposed to be very independent. If your gender conditioning tells you what women are like, very ladylike, then you may be keeping some of your power tamped down, some of your assertiveness and ambition tamped down. If your culture is telling you, which most cultures still do, even in the 21st century, about your gender conditioning as a man, big boys don't cry, you may be keeping your sensitive side in the shadows, judging it as weak and somehow unacceptable. And then every family will teach you, we're intellectual in our family, or we're athletic in our family, or the Smiths do it this way, or we're very religious. And so the part of you that may be irreverent about religion or skeptical or agnostic, or the part of you that isn't interested in athletics, you don't fit in your family, and so you try to hide so that you fit into your family, community, gender identity. But as we get to midlife, we don't want to keep snipping off parts of ourselves and hiding them anymore. We want to be full, we want to be whole, we want our power and passion back. And then what we've been busy disguising and hiding for all these many years, we're trying to take out of that shadow bag and reintegrate those splintered off parts back into our personality. As we do that, we find that we're not so judgmental about other people because we're not busy being in reaction to the part of ourselves that we haven't made peace with in ourselves. So this is great for relationships when you really take on shadow work because you know who you are, you know your weak suits, and you know your strong suits. You know your dark shadow figures, and you're managing them better rather than letting them be in the lead. You keep them in the background, and you know your golden shadow, the best of who we are, the holy person, the gifted artist, the contributor to the community, the most generous, high integrity, courageous warrior part of ourselves. And we have all of those aspects working for us. And the person who we're closest to, they see us and accept us as is with our flaws and our weaknesses and our less developed side. We don't have to hide. And then when somebody says, I love you, we can really be nourished by it because we're not haunted by, well, if they really knew me, they would reject me and they wouldn't love me.
Yeah, we can really take that in because we know that they see us, because we are no longer pushing out in front of us our image that we think is necessary for our acceptance. So when we can really come to terms with ourself and accept those parts of ourself that we have been afraid to acknowledge, then we're no longer reactive to other people who may have a problem with us, because we don't tend to take it personally. We don't need their approval when we have our own acceptance. It doesn't mean that we don't want people to like us. It doesn't mean that we don't want their approval. It just means that we don't need it in order to feel okay about ourselves. And so we're much less likely to get defensive and reactive if we fear that people may not like aspects of ourselves.
When people start to realize that we have a shadow, it's normal to have a shadow, everybody's got a shadow, and they start getting curious, wanting to know what's in the shadow and see that there's some usefulness, that every aspect of us has some purpose in our life, then you want to start relating to your shadow. You want to get to know him like some new person that you met. And to stop hating the shadow and fearing the shadow. That we're all multiple personalities, not in the psychopathological way. We're all interesting variety, conglomeration of aspects of who we are. And that some of the things that may have been told to us about that part of us as objectionable might really not be. It may be a great asset. And here's some good news about the shadow. They all have a significant part to play in our life, and they all come to us with gifts in their hands if we get to know them well enough. So since we can't kill the shadow, we can't have a shadowectomy, we might as well do our best to get in right relationship with them and have them working for us.
To get curious about the shadow is really the first step. And finding out what it is, like Linda had mentioned, one of the best ways to find out what might be in there is to notice the kind of person that you tend to be reactive to, or to notice people that you have a lot of trouble with, or that you have judgments towards. Chances are pretty good that they represent or embody aspects of yourself that you haven't really come to terms with and haven't accepted. Once we do, those same people show up to us very differently. So instead of seeing somebody who seems to be have a big ego, or somebody who is controlling in a negative way, we see them as perhaps with some compassion or with some understanding or with some sense of care about who they might be. And this changes the foundation of all of our relationships. So to really look within ourselves and to notice, what is it that I am experiencing in response to this person? And what is it that is causing me to feel this way? What's the fear that underlies my need to conceal and control these aspects of myself so that nobody sees them? Because there's always a fear that underlies the need to keep something in the shadow. So what is that fear? To reflect on that, and perhaps even to share that with a partner or a trusted friend that you're in a relationship with, because one of the things that disempowers the shadow and that frees up some of the energy that we have that holds it back within us is the willingness to acknowledge and express this to somebody.
By the same method that we discover our dark shadow figures, who is it that we've got a strong emotional charge on that can mirror back to us some place that we're not in acceptance of some aspect of ourselves, you can use that same method to find your golden shadow, the best of who we are. You look around in your life, maybe a historical figure, maybe somebody that you know in your family, maybe somebody that you have met long ago or you've never met, but that person just dazzles you. You're so in admiration of that person. They're high integrity, they're very intelligent, they're charismatic, they're artistic and creative. Whatever it is that you feel so drawn to, that they seem to you to be an exemplary person, if you can spot it, you got it. At least in some bud form in you, the potential to bring that golden part of yourself out is there. And you know, people are just about as resistant to owning their golden side, or more so, than they are their dark side. And what we've come to understand in working with the shadow over years, there's a tremendous responsibility that comes with owning your gifts and your magnificence. And then it's a shame to waste it, because the people in our lives and our community are just waiting for us to come out with our golden self.
And it's not so much that somebody is going to require you to fulfill a certain obligation or to live up to a certain standard when you own those gifts that we all have. There's a compelling urgency to express ourselves that comes from within us. It doesn't come from somebody else's expectations. But when we have lived with pressure from other people, from parents or from authority figures, that we feel obliged to meet those expectations, we can have some fear or some resistance to doing that. But there is an inner urgency that inevitably arises when we acknowledge the gifts that we've been given and what it is that we have to offer to really contribute to other people.
Now, the way in which doing this deep shadow work enhances relationships is that this drive for mastery, this drive that we all have in us to become more whole, that over the years we've been slicing off a piece here and a piece there and putting it away. And then when we do the soul retrieval, when we retrieve these lost parts of the self, instead of being a thin sliver of who we could be, we're full and whole. Then instead of being, like a 1/4 and a 1/4 doesn't even make up a half, we're two whole human beings coming together to put our lives together. And that's the makings of a great relationship.